The NFL draft is full of surprises, but some of the biggest draft slides in history are wild.
Shador Sanders, 5th round pick. Really?
Tonsel was projected to be one of the top picks in the draft, but after this video of him was posted on his verified Twitter account, he went tumbling down the draft board.
From future Hall of Famers to game-changing playmakers, these are the 10 biggest draft slides in NFL history. Starting at number 10 with DK Metcalf. Coming out of Ole Miss, DK Metcalf looked like he was built in a lab. At 6'3" and 228 pounds, with 4.33 speed, a 40.5-inch vertical, and just 1.6% body fat, he was built like a linebacker and moved like a track star. But when the 2019 NFL Draft rolled around, teams panicked. Scouts nitpicked his route running, feared a neck injury he suffered in college, and most of all, worried about his agility. His 7.38-second cone drill was slower than some offensive linemen, which had teams thinking that he was too stiff, too limited, and even too muscular. So instead of going early, DK slid all the way to the 64th pick, the final pick of the second round. 8 receivers were selected before him, including guys like N'Keal Harry, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, and Andy Isabella. Then, the Seahawks finally took a shot on DK. And it didn't take long to see they'd made the right move. DK had over 900 yards and 7 touchdowns as a rookie, instantly becoming a favorite target for Russell Wilson. But it was his second season that turned heads around the league. He racked up 1,303 yards and 10 touchdowns, broke Steve Largent's Seahawks record for most receiving yards in a season, and earned second-team All-Pro honors. Whether it's burning corners deep, bulldozing safeties after the catch, or chasing down defenders like he did with Budda Baker, Metcalf is a game-changer. And this year he'll be taking his talents to Pittsburgh after the Seahawks traded him. But Metcalf isn't the only player moving on from Seattle this year. In fact, he isn't the only draft slide moving on from them either. Because at number 9, we've got Gino Smith, who in 2013 was the guy. He had just lit up college football at West Virginia with over 4,200 yards, 42 touchdowns, and only 6 picks in his senior season. He was mobile, had a strong arm, and played with swagger. A lot of draft experts had him as the top quarterback in the class. Some projected him to go top 5, or even first overall. But when night 1 of the NFL draft rolled around, Gino's moment never came. Only one quarterback went in the first round, E.J. Manuel to the Bills. Turns out there were several red flags that started popping up late in the pre-draft process. Some teams questioned Gino's football IQ and ability to read defenses. Others were reportedly turned off by his pre-draft interviews, saying he came off as unprepared or overconfident. It wasn't until pick 39, deep into the second round, that the New York Jets finally took him. The thing is, going to the Jets is basically quarterback hell. Gino was thrown into a dysfunctional Jets offense and struggled early, only for turnovers, injuries, and drama to follow. After a locker room fight left him with a broken jaw in 2015, his time in New York was over.
You know, you can't tolerate that. If you have a team and you have a bunch of side issues, you can't tolerate that.
Most people assumed that was it, but he bounced around as a backup for the Giants, Chargers, and Seahawks, just trying to stay in the league. Then, out of nowhere in 2022, Gino beat out Drew Lock for the Seahawks starting job and turned it into one of the most shocking comeback seasons in years. He threw for over 4,200 yards, 30 touchdowns, made the Pro Bowl, and led the Seahawks to the playoffs, and won NFL Comeback Player of the Year. So after years of doubt, Gino finally flipped the narrative. And now he's got a chance to do it again as the face of the new-look Raiders. Gino had to grind for nearly a decade to earn respect. But at number 8, Lamar Jackson made the league regret passing on him almost instantly. Coming out of college, Lamar had put up video game numbers, won the Heisman Trophy, and was easily the most dangerous dual-threat QB in the draft. But teams questioned his mechanics, his accuracy, and whether his style of play would hold up in the NFL. They didn't trust a quarterback who had relied so much on his legs. Multiple teams even wanted him to switch positions and be a wide receiver instead. So, draft night came, and 4 quarterbacks went in the top 10. Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, and Josh Rosen. It wasn't until pick 32, the very last pick of the first round, that the Baltimore Ravens traded up to get Lamar. And what happened next? Pure magic. By year 2, Lamar Jackson was the unanimous NFL MVP, leading the league in touchdown passes and breaking the quarterback rushing record. He made All-Pro First Team, took the Ravens to the playoffs, and instantly became one of the faces of the league. He won his second MVP in 2023 and is now on the hunt for a championship ring. But while Lamar made teams question if he could play quarterback, at number 7, Lyall Collins made teams question if he'd even be allowed to play at all. Heading into the 2015 NFL Draft, Lyall, who was an LSU offensive lineman at the time, was projected to go in the first round, maybe even top 15. He was big, athletic, and dominant in the SEC. But just days before the draft, everything changed. Police wanted to speak with Collins in connection to the tragic murder of a pregnant woman he had previously dated. He wasn't a suspect, he wasn't charged with anything, but the timing couldn't have been worse. The story broke during the final draft prep window, and GMs didn't want to risk a high pick on someone involved in an active investigation, even if it was just for questioning. As a result, Collins' draft stock completely collapsed. He went from first-round lock to undrafted. The investigation eventually concluded, and he was never charged or linked to any wrongdoing. But the damage was already done. However, as a free agent, Collins signed with the Dallas Cowboys, joining an already stacked offensive line. And from day one, he looked like the player everyone expected. He played multiple positions, eventually locking in as the starting right tackle and forming a dominant trio with Tyron Smith and Zach Martin. By 2019, he was regarded as one of the best tackles in the league and earned a 5-year, $50 million extension. But while Collins eventually found his footing in the league, at number 6, Brady Quinn never got the chance to. The Notre Dame star had a big arm, good size, great production, and the classic pocket passing ability NFL teams loved. Some experts had him going top 5, possibly even number 1 overall to the Raiders. He had the looks, the resume, and the hype. Everything pointed to Brady Quinn being a franchise quarterback. But once the draft actually started, things got awkward. The Raiders took Jamarcus Russell first overall, then went Calvin Johnson, then Joe Thomas. Then another team passed, and another, and another. And as the picks rolled in, Brady Quinn kept sitting there in the green room, live on TV, with the cameras locked on his face. It wasn't until the 22nd overall pick when the Cleveland Browns traded back into the first round to finally take him. But unfortunately, Quinn never found his footing in Cleveland. He spent most of his time backing up Derek Anderson, only started 12 games across 3 seasons, and never looked like the star everyone expected. By 2010, he was traded to the Broncos, then he bounced around to teams like the Chiefs, Seahawks, and Rams, but never became a full-time starter again. He didn't just fall down the board, he fell out of the spotlight entirely. But the same can't be said about the player at number 5. It's Randy Moss. If you have a chance to take generational talent, you do it. And there's never been a more obvious, can't-miss wide receiver than Randy Moss. He ran a 4.25 40-yard dash, stood at 6'4", had a 47-inch vertical, and absolutely destroyed college defenses at Marshall. Talent-wise, he was a top 5 lock. His combination of speed, strength, and body control was something the NFL had never really seen before. But when the 1998 NFL Draft rolled around, teams got nervous. Not about the football part, but about everything else. He had been kicked out of Notre Dame before ever playing a down, then booted from Florida State after a failed drug test. Even though he was clearly the most talented wide receiver in the draft, the league wasn't sure if he was worth the headache. 20 teams passed on him. Even the Dallas Cowboys, who reportedly promised to take him, but pulled a last-minute pivot and left him hanging. Then, at pick 21, the Minnesota Vikings rolled the dice. And what came next was pure domination. Moss put up 1,313 yards and 17 touchdowns as a rookie, made the Pro Bowl, turned the Vikings into one of the scariest offenses in league history, and burned every single team that thought they were smart for passing on him. He finished his career with over 15,000 yards, 156 touchdowns, 4 first-team All-Pros, and a first-ballot Hall of Fame jacket. He was so dominant, so explosive, and so impossible to stop, they had to turn his name into a verb. You got mossed. And boy, was that a highlight reel you did not want to end up on. He redefined the receiver position. Now, at number 4, we've got a lineman who redefined what a draft day disaster looks like. Because it's not every day that an offensive lineman is projected to go number 1 overall. But at 6'5", 310 pounds, with freaky athleticism and smooth footwork, Laramie Tonsel was expected to do just that. That was until just minutes before the draft started, when a tweet hit Laramie's own Twitter account. See, someone hacked into his account and posted a video of him wearing a gas mask connected to a bong. And just like that, Tunsel's stock free fell. Teams weren't sure what they were looking at, who leaked it, or whether more was coming. And it didn't matter that he denied it. It didn't matter that he passed every drug test. The damage was done. Instead of going top 5, he slid all the way to pick 13, where the Miami Dolphins finally pulled the trigger. He walked on stage, smiled, and acted like nothing happened. But everybody knew what they just witnessed. Despite the concerns, though, Tonsel developed into one of the best left tackles in football. He's been to the Pro Bowl 5 times, signed multiple mega extensions, and is now heading over to Washington to help protect rookie sensation Jaden Daniels. But while Tonsel fell because of a viral video, at number 3, another former Dolphin first-rounder fell because of something far worse. Dan Marino was a 3-year starter at Pitt, had a rocket arm, quick release, and looked every bit like an NFL franchise QB. And early on, he was in the mix with guys like John Elway and Jim Kelly. But then his senior year happened. He threw 17 interceptions, Pitt lost a few key games, and suddenly the questions started. Whispers spread about his work ethic and his off-the-field issues, most notably drug use. But here's the thing, they were just rumors. Nothing was ever proven. All it took was a few doubts for Marino's draft stock to slip. In one of the most stacked QB classes of all time, 6 quarterbacks were taken in the first round, and Marino was the 6th. He fell all the way to pick 27, where the Miami Dolphins, who already had a solid quarterback, couldn't believe he was still available. In just his second season, Marino threw for 5,084 yards and 48 touchdowns, both records at the time. He won MVP, took the Dolphins to the Super Bowl, and looked completely unstoppable. Quick release, deep ball mastery, pocket presence. He had it all. Marino finished with over 61,000 passing yards, 420 touchdowns, and went down as one of the best pure passers in NFL history. And one of the QBs to rival him for that title was the second most shocking draft slide. Aaron Rodgers was a passer with a quick release, elite accuracy, and a good chance to be drafted first overall. It was going to be a dream come true for him, especially since his childhood favorite team, the San Francisco 49ers, had the first pick. But instead of a dream come true, it was A-Rod's worst nightmare. Despite being hailed as a potential superstar, concerns about his mechanics, his attitude, and even the system he played in at Cal caused teams to pass on him over and over again. But finally, after sitting through 23 painful selections, the Green Bay Packers called his name at pick 24. When asked about how he felt being passed on by his dream team, Rodgers delivered one of the coldest lines in draft history.
How disappointed are you that you will not be a 49er?
Not as disappointed as the 49ers will be that they didn't draft me.
And although he was taken by the Packers, there was a problem. They already had 3-time MVP, Super Bowl winning, living legend Brett Favre at quarterback, meaning Rodgers had to wait his turn. But after 3 years, he finally got his chance, and A-Rod made the most of it. Rodgers won 4 MVPs, he threw for over 59,000 yards, nearly 500 touchdowns, and led the Packers to a Super Bowl win. Not as disappointed as they're gonna be. Yeah, he was right. And finally, the one we all knew was coming, the biggest draft slide in NFL history. Number 1, Shador Sanders, a man who was supposed to be a first-round lock. Just a few months before the draft, many people thought it was likely that he'd get drafted 2nd overall by the Browns. And Cleveland did end up taking Shador, just 142 picks later than expected. So what went wrong? Well, being Deion's son is a gift and a curse. In the pre-draft process, Deion made it clear that there were certain teams he didn't want to draft his son.
That's my son. I'm not gonna let my son get down in no foolishness. It's not like who I would like for him to play for. It's a couple teams that I won't allow him to play for. So it's not like that. But this is my profession. I know what's behind the curtain.
To make matters worse, when Shador arrived to meetings, he was reportedly cocky and unprepared. But even deeper than that, Shador is extremely popular and attracts a lot of media coverage, which you'd think would be great. However, that's actually worked against Sanders because teams didn't view him as a starting quarterback, and they didn't want a media frenzy surrounding a backup whose job is often to work in the shadows and help the starter prepare. So when draft night rolled around, it became harder and harder to find a fit for Shador, and he had potentially the worst fall in NFL history. The whole thing was live-streamed with his family and a crowd of reporters surrounding him, but his moment never came on day 1, or even day 2. It got so wild that even President Donald Trump tweeted about it, saying, "What is wrong with NFL owners? Are they stupid?" Deion Sanders was a great football player and was even greater in the NFL. He also is a very good coach, streetwise and smart. Therefore, Shador, his quarterback son, has phenomenal genes and is all set for greatness. He should be picked immediately by a team that wants to win. Good luck, Shador, and say hello hello to your wonderful father. And if you thought things couldn't get any worse, on day 3, he received a prank call from the 21-year-old son of Falcons defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich.
Yeah, but you're going to have to wait a little bit longer, man.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Finally, after days of embarrassment, the Browns selected him in the 5th round with the 144th pick, the 6th quarterback selected and the 2nd QB drafted by the Browns. All things considered, for being a 5th-round pick, Cleveland is not a bad situation for Sanders to walk into. The Browns' quarterback room is crowded, but it's far from locked down. Right now, Shador is battling it out with Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, and an injured Deshaun Watson. So if Shador comes into training camp locked in, quickly picks up the playbook and shows leadership, and most importantly, lets his arm do the talking, there's no reason he can't become the starter. If you enjoyed this video, stick with Blitz, subscribe, and check out some of our other content right here.